Hey everyone, Billiam here. Pack your bowl tight, roll a big one, grab a tea, whatever it is that you need to do, because this chapter is 22 pages long, and we're about to tuck into it. Alright, this is Lost Lemon Mine, Chapter 3, The First Nation Stories. One thing though, before we get started, I want to make a shout out to Brayden from True North Adventures. So he's going for some surgery now, and he's probably going to be out maybe for the rest of the season, and that's okay because he's going to make it through. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link of his GoFundMe page in the description below. So if you feel obliged, like get on there and give him whatever, $5, $10, $20, doesn't matter. It's really going to help him and his family out. I just wish him all the best, and I hope to see him out there again. Right on, buddy. Heavy pans, and everything's going to be fine. So, without further ado, let's get into this. The First Nation stories. So several First Nation stories speak of lost gold, but it is possible that some of them may not be connected with the Lost Lemon Mine. While the evidence linking these accounts to the mystery is circumstantial, they should be included in any discussion of the Lost Lemon Mine, as they may provide valuable clues to the solution of this puzzle. Maybe. The Files of Arthur Canton, and we heard about Canton in the last episode. Okay. Art J. Canton was born in Lowell, Massachusetts. He first came to Alberta in the early years of the century. His lifelong passions included automotive sports and a love of the outdoors and Western Canadian history. Notably, the legend of the Lost Lemon Mine. According to Bob, his son, Art, was frequently gripped by the fits of wanderlust and gold fever, and was always ready to head off into the mountains to check out a new lead or one of his theories concerning Lemon's gold. No doubt, Art loved a good story and derived much pleasure from the time he spent hiking up the wilderness trails looking for Lemon's lost Eldorado. Art Canton died of a heart attack on July 26, 1984, at the age of 73. While some people believe that the Lost Lemon Mine is somewhere in the upper reaches of the Highwood River, Canton's account suggests that the Lost Lemon Mine is actually farther north, near the headwaters of the Clearwater River. Logan Clearwater. The story begins in January 1894. It had been a terrible fall, with the snows coming deep and early, driving most game animals off their usual ranges. Although the federal authorities were supposed to supply treaty Indians with cattle to replace a buffalo, which had been virtually exterminated from North America by the mid-1880s, this did not always happen. As a result, the Indians of the... It's a weird... Anyhow, it's what the book is written in, right? So, as a result, the Indians of the reserve were frequently forced to exist on a subsistence diet. Apparently, the severe weather had caused many deaths, and by January, they were getting desperate. Colin Thompson, cool last name, was a homesteader living near the Little Red Deer River, situated in what is now Red Lodge Provincial Park, about 70 miles north and west of Calgary, near the town of Bowden. Two Cree Braves, leading a string of 8-pack horses, came from the west and took refuge from the storm at Thompson's place. They were completely done in and suffering terribly from the severe cold. Like most pioneers would have done, Thompson promptly took them in. The Crees warmed themselves around Thompson's wood stove and shared a meal with him and a trapper named Henning, who was visiting the household. As a result of Thompson's kindness, we may now hold an important clue to the mystery surrounding the Lost Lemon Mine. The Crees, grateful for the reprieve from the storm, were ready to converse with their newfound friends. Fortunately, Thompson had worked as a factor for the HBC and could speak Cree. For the Braves, told an amazing story. It had been a winter of starvation and death before the tribe camped in a protected foothill valley, could lay in a winter supply of meat. Heavy snows had driven the animals out of the vicinity. Due to the snow, the tribe had been unable to travel, and they were forced to subsist on rabbits and grouse. Soon, even this food source would become scarce, and death came to the snowbound encampment, carrying off a number of babies and elders. With their situation perilous, the chief called upon the two braves who now sat in Thompson's shanty. He instructed them to make the hazardous trip to the trading post at Bowden, on the eastern end of the valley, where they could obtain badly needed supplies. They had been traveling for 8 days and were most grateful to Thompson for the food and shelter, for they were exhausted and might not have made the post at Bowden. Crazy winter. Thompson, having seen their horses, noted that they had carried no furs or other trade goods. Curious, he asked what they had planned to barter at Bowden, since the post was not noted for its charity when it came to dealing with First Nations people. He inquired whether or not they planned to swap their horses for trade goods. The Crees answered in the negative, stating all that the horses would be needed to carry supplies back to their starving people. Oh, all that the horses would be, yeah, so that's a typo. All the horses would be needed for was to just carry supplies back to the camp. When Thompson told the Braves the storekeeper would give them nothing without something to trade, the older of the two Crees pulled out from his saddlebag 2 buckskin pokes packed with coarse golden nuggets. He was certain that the white trader at Bowden would have no objections to taking this instead. The effect upon Thompson and Henning was immediate. Henning became wildly excited upon seeing the gold and wanted to know where it had came from. The Crees answered that the gold had come from a sacred valley. However, when pressed for more details, they would just say the location was taboo and was known only to the chief and the medicine man. Maybe a couple other. The gold was to be used in extreme emergencies, such as one in which the tribe now found itself. The chief had given the Braves just enough gold to pay for the white man's supplies. Henning was convinced that there must be much more gold at the diggings and questioned the Crees about the location of the find. As Henning's questions became more probing, the two men became reluctant to discuss the matter any further. But they did say that the gold was near a First Nations burial ground. Henning offered them his pack outfit, his horse rifle, traps, and pelts. In fact, everything he owned, if the Crees would take him to the location of the secret valley. The Crees, no doubt seeing Henning's excitement and knowing of the white man's madness for the yellow metal, refused his offer and insisted they must leave at once for the trading post. As they rode toward Bowden, 10 miles to the east, Henning made plans to follow them when they returned to the mountains and their tribe. What a creep. Total creep. Perhaps the Crees suspected Henning's intentions, for they went home by another route. Henning waited at the homestead for several days before realizing that the Crees would not return. And before he could backtrack along the original trail, a snowstorm obliterated their tracks toward the mountains. Hennings estimated that the Crees had traveled about 100 miles before they reached the Thompson homestead. In later years, the gold had indeed saved the tribe that terrible winter. In an article that appeared in the Golden West magazine in 1968, Bob Canton stated that the sacred valley of which the Cree spoke and the Lost Lemon Mine could have been the same place. And these are, this is in quotations here. The old Rocky Mountain House trading post was situated on the North Saskatchewan River. Rocky Mountain House. Punk Rock Panner, if you're watching, tell me about that. Rocky Mountain House. A well-known gold-bearing stream on the eastern side of the Rockies to the south and west of Rocky Mountain House are other gold-bearing streams, all flowing easterly. But to the south and west of Morley, there are no gold-bearing streams east of the Continental Divide. The old Indian Trail, which leads south from Rocky Mountain House, traverses both these areas. It is not reasonable to assume that Blackjack and Lemon could have followed one of these more northerly streams to the Mother Lode, the sacred spot of the Crees, and perhaps the Stoney Indian. Now, Blackjack and Lemon were Americans, working out of Fort Benton or the Tobacco Plains. Normally, they would have headed home by the shortest route. The shortest route home was in a southerly direction, whether they started from Mist Mountain, High River, or Rocky Mountain House, to get to Fort Benton. To get to Fort Benton from High River or the area near Mist Mountain, they would have traveled southeasterly to Fort McLeod, Fort Kipp, and Fort Hamilton. Fort Whoop Up! Then south on the wagon road to Fort Benton. Being about 75 miles or more south of Morleyville, it is unlikely that Chief Bearspaw could always be aware of their presence in that area. But on the other hand, if they came from west of Bowden and traveled to south to either Fort Benton or to the Tobacco Plains, their route was straight through Bearpaw's territory, as the Indian Trail from Rocky Mountain House passed directly through Morleyville. That's a lot of that stuff. Can we not further assume that the mine could be somewhere near this northmost trail, possibly 100 miles west of Bowden, which figured in the Starving Indian episode? There is gold in the area south of the Rocky Mountain House, none in the area south of Morley. End quotation. Gets thick in the middle of this book. This may explain why the Lost Lemon Mine has not been found south of Morley on the Highwood River, even though people have scoured the area for over 100 years. Canton's articles concluded by adding an even more dramatic clue to the possible solution of the Lost Lemon Mine mystery. While the story of Colin Thompson, the starving Crees, and their gold dust is central to Canton's theory, he ends his article with a revelation that may prove that he was on the right track in determining the location of the Lost Lemon Mine. Quotations again. I think this might have been his article. At the present time, the writer, with the information and guidance of a friend and a hunting companion, recently found a valley in the mountains west of Bowden that has all the known requirements of the Lost Lemon Mine. A once well-traveled trail, long abandoned and overgrown. Well, okay. The confluence of 3 creeks, etc. It is somewhere west of Red Lodge Provincial Park at a distance of about 8 days' ride. But most important of all, there is a hole that looks suspiciously like a mine entrance, nestled high in the side of a mountain, that will remain at the moment nameless. Fearing the wrath of Wakonda, we dared not climb to investigate. The month being June, the weather warm, and another avalanche all set to be triggered by some clumsy paleface. We were content to examine the possible location with the spotting scope from the other side of the valley about a half mile away. It was visible from a narrow angle only. A man could glass the slope for days and not see the hole unless he was just in the right place and looked in just the right direction. Big John, our mountain friend and hunter, on a 1,000-to-1 chance spotted it when the bighorn sheep he was hunting passed near. It is a sure bet we will take a good look next summer when the slopes are dry and firm, making a climb to the spot for a first-hand inspection. Sounds like Frank exploring abandoned mines. Throws his drone out, finds a hole, just goes into it. So friends, make your own conclusions, north or south. the old Indian Trail is now a Forestry Service road, passable to Jeep and other vehicles in the summer. The grandson of the chief, Jacob Bearspaw, King Bearspaw, now in his 70s, has spent most of his life looking for the mine in this same valley. Crazy. This is certainly a fascinating tale. In my discussions with Bob Canton, he told me of this occasion sometime in the late 1950s, when he and his father met up with King Bearspaw in the same valley. According to their discussions with the forest ranger who had been stationed in the region for about 15 years, they learned that King Bearspaw had been coming to prospect in this valley for as long as the ranger had been at his posting. It seemed unlikely that Bearspaw, a man who had a direct connection with the story through his father, Chief Moses Bearspaw, would have spent so many years searching this valley for the location of the mine if it were, as the popular theory proposed, 100 miles to the south. Unfortunately, Art Canton never succeeded in entering the cave that may have held the secret of the Lost Lemon Mine. When they returned that following year, a slide had destroyed the trail, leading up from the valley to the mouth of a tiny chamber. The cave was cut in a vertical face of sheer rock. It was not possible to gain access to the chamber without climbing gear or a helicopter. Yeesh. Other circumstances prevented Art and Bob from investigating the cave in the following years, and it now seems that the exact location of the cave has been lost. Fortunately, Bob was able to locate a photograph of the mysterious cave that his father had taken so long ago. Another interesting item from Art Canton's personal archives is an audio tape on which Canton recorded an old story from the fur trading journals concerning gold. The story is also found in Kerry Wood's book, A Corner of Canada. It was recorded in the journals that a Cree man who traded at Rocky Mountain House was known to have cast the bullets for his muzzle loader out of pure gold. Unfortunately, there is no mention in the account as to the possible source of this gold. Another story from this audio tape concerns stolen gold at Red Deer. Is this another clue to the existence of a lost mine west of Bowden? Quotations. A Miss Bella Johnson, who did housework around Red Deer in 1910 to 1925, was an Indian woman who confided to her white friends that this same gold had killed her husband. He supposedly found the cache and brought out over $1,000 worth of dust. That's a lot back then. That's a lot back then. Shortly afterward, he died, and his wife was firmly convinced that his death was due to a violation of the tribal taboo. This area is due west of Bowden, and places in it the same general area as the Red Deer Ranger Station, around which King Bearspaw was searching through a great many summers of his life. I'll show you a picture. I'm going to try and look in here, see if you can read that. Pause it, read it. Alright, so the caption under this picture is, in 1968, Art Canton photographed a vertical rock face with a cave that he believed might have held clues to the secret of the Lost Lemon Mine. Oh, yeah, I see the cave. There's a little aerial on there. Oh, cool. The source of this story is uncertain, and no other details are known concerning these anecdotes. If they are true, they certainly add weight to Canton's theory that the Lost Lemon Mine is located somewhere along the Clearwater River, west of Bowden, toward Rocky Mountain House. A variation of Colin Thompson's story. It's just I guess an excerpt of what he was talking about. But Colin Thompson, the man who had taken the Cree Braves from the cold, was born in the village of Rosemarkie, Scotland, on September 3rd, 1855. He joined the HBC in 1875. He was 20 years old. Yeah. In 1875, and several HBC posts over the years. So over and over again, he was always part of the post. The Pass, Grand Rapids, Fort Stanley, and Norway House. During his service at the Pass, he met Sarah Margaret MacDonald, whom he married on July 28th, 1884 in Winnipeg. It's my birthday. Sweet. In 1892, Thompson left the employ of the HBC and returned to Scotland with his family. They came to Canada in 1895 and settled in the Red Lodge area, 10 miles west of the present town of Bowden, along the Little Red Deer River. Thompson operated a trading post at the Red Lodge for several years and served as postmaster until the time of his death on February 4th, 1931. Another tale concerning Thompson and the Cree Braves who were carrying the gold dust is entitled Red Gold. It comes from the files of the Bowden Historical Society. The account is at odds with that recorded by Art Canton, and it is not possible to say with any certainty which version is correct. It seems likely that this tale, like many others connected with the Lost Lemon Mine, has undergone subtle changes with each telling. Of course it has. What follows is based on this account. And this is the account. One day, while Thompson was trading or selling some goods to several trapper prospectors, 2 Cree Braves, who were unknown to Thompson, entered the trading post. They selected a number of food items but had no money to pay for the purchase, offering instead a quantity of red gold, which is placer gold that contains traces of copper. As you can imagine, this red gold caused a great deal of excitement among the prospectors who were dealing with Thompson, and they began to question the Crees as to the source of the gold. The Crees' replies were non-committal, but this only seemed to increase the prospectors' interest. So they're probably saying something like, "Get the F out of here, Skanakusan," or something like that. Or "White man, Matusk," something like that. Skanakusan is son of a bitch, and Matusk is cries a lot in Cree. The prospectors became more and more inquisitive until the Crees, weary of the questions, beat a retreat and hurried out of the trading post. A few moments later, the prospectors gathered up their gear and also left the post, presumably in search of the Braves. It is thought that the prospectors caught up with the Crees and tried to force the secret location of the red gold from them. According to the story, neither the white men nor the Crees were seen again. This led to speculation that the Crees may have murdered the white prospectors to keep the secret of the red gold, or perhaps the Braves were murdered after confessing their secrets to the prospectors. However, it is not possible to state with any certainty what had happened to any of them. The account does say that red gold was very uncommon in the Bowden area, and that very little red gold had been seen since the Crees visited Thompson's post at Red Lodge. Did the red gold come from lemon stingings? Maybe. So this is the Chronicle of King Bearspaw. King Bearspaw, who died in April 1979 at the age of 89, was the final living link to the mystery of the lost lemon mine. The son of Chief Moses Bearspaw, King Bearspaw, devoted more than 70 years of his life to searching for the fabled mine. King Bearspaw's grandfather, Chief Jacob Bearspaw, first learned about Blackjack's murder from the 2 Stony Braves who had witnessed it. The names of these Braves in Dan Riley's version of the story are given as William and Daniel Bendo. In the 1950s, Dr. Hugh Dempsey, an archivist with the Glenbow Institute, concluded that the surname Bendo was unknown among the 3 Stony bands: the Wesley, Chiniki, and Bearspaw. Hopefully I said that right. Chiniki. Indeed, a search of the treaty list for 1877 shows no trace of the name, as Riley's version of the story has William Bendo present at Blackjack's murder and meeting with Lafayette French in 1912, the year of his death. This apparent contradiction must be addressed. While the name Bendo never appears on the treaty lists, the name Daniel and Paul Bigman do. in 1917. It is interesting to note that Daniel Bigman was 16 years old in 1870, the year of Blackjack's murder, and that one of the children listed under Paul Bigman's ticket, quotations, parentheses, the listing of affiliated members of his family on the reserve, end parentheses, was a young boy by the name of King Bearspaw. Although no mention of the Bendo appears anywhere, Bigman is the only similar surname that appears, and the fact that King Bearspaw was part of the family affiliated with Bigman suggests there may have been a connection. King Bearspaw began his search for the Lost Lemon Mine in 1907. An article by Tom Primrose in the Nanton News of July 24th, 1959, quotes, King Bearspaw, speaking about his early interest in the mysterious mine, quotations, I have had it in my blood since I was a boy. I have been a dream. It has been a dream to me all my life, and I guess I'd sooner look for the Lost Lemon Mine than do anything else. My grandmother said it was all right to look for it. My mother told me not to look for the mine because if I found the gold, it would bring me unhappiness and maybe death. I've kept on looking all these years. I don't think the gold would have done me any harm if I had found it. End quote. When asked whether he believed that the Lost Lemon Mine existed, Bearspaw replied, Oh yes, it's there somewhere. My grandfather knew where it was, but he would never tell anyone where. He told me all about it though, except where the mine was. He and his two brothers knew. One of the Bearpaws saw the murder committed over the gold Lemon and Blackjack found. None of them would tell where the gold is. King Bearspaw went on to say that none of the young people were interested in hearing about these things now. He was of the opinion that the old chief did not keep the location of the mine secret because of his dislike of gold or white men, but because the finding of the gold would have brought in a rush of gold seekers, and the good hunting grounds would be destroyed. King Bearspaw concluded by saying, he had no use for the gold, but I do. I guess that makes sense. The secret of the Lost Lemon Mine's location passed from Chief Jacob Bearspaw to King's father, Chief Moses Bearspaw. However, because of the king's professed interest in finding the mine and his desire to use the gold, the secret was never passed on to him and died with Chief Moses Bearspaw in 1921. Also in 1921, King Bearspaw gave up his rights as the treaty Indian to be free to travel the backcountry of the reserve, looking for the lost mine. Fever. He's got the gold fever. On February 16th, 1931, an article in the Calgary Daily Herald reported on an ill-fated gold rush at the head of the Livingston Creek. This is the article. In 1931, rumors of gold brought hordes of eager fortune hunters to the foot of Mount Sentinel Pass, west of High River. Poorly equipped, few got further than the bottom of the eastern side of the pass. Those who did struggle on to the Livingstone, found nothing but worthless fool's gold or iron pyrites. Fred Kennedy, reporter for the Calgary Herald, ventured into the mountains on horseback to either prove or disprove the gold rush. Kennedy and his group headed out from Buffalo Head Branch on the Highwood River. The first night out, they had good fortune to come across the camp of King Bearspaw, who was returning from a hunting trip. After some discussion, Bearspaw agreed to accompany Kennedy and his group over the pass. About 2 hours after they had left, a sudden blizzard struck. Bearspaw urged them, saying it was now or never. During the storm, one of their pack horses was caught by the wind and overturned, falling from the trail to break its back when it landed on the crotch of a tree. Finally, reaching Livingston Creek, they had hoped to wash samples of ore for gold, but were prevented as the creek bed was bone dry. They met up with Senator Dan Riley and his 3 sons who had arrived on the Livingston before them. No gold was found, and the samples collected failed to impress either Riley or Kennedy. On their way out, they were met by dozens of gold seekers heading into the region and managed to convince most of those they had met it was a fool's mission. Finally, with Kennedy's help, the RCMP managed to convince the public that the gold rush was a hoax, and before long, the whole thing fizzled out. So that'd be a good place to check. Livingston Creek. Shit, why not? There was one version of events, but there was this was one version of events, but there was another. So George Pocatera had the retired rancher and prospector who led the expedition for the Calgary Daily Herald in 1931 talked about this trip in an article published by the newspaper on November 9th, 1961, so 30 years later. In this article, he also said that he was very skeptical about the Lost Lemon Mine and doubted whether it ever existed. It was Pocatera's opinion that Lemon and Blackjack probably stole the gold dust from miners in the Kootenay Mountains of BC, then hiked out over the mountains into the high river country. Lemon probably murdered his partner to avoid splitting the robbery loot, then made up a story about a mine to cover his deeds. Pocatera concluded by saying, That's the story that makes sense to me. Almost there, guys. Almost there. Let's just keep shredding. Pocatera's version of the events that transpired on the 1931 trip at its odds with some of the other accounts published in the media. In a letter Pocatera wrote to the editor of the Albertan, which was published on November 11, 1961, he attempts to set the record straight. Here he goes. This is the article. In February 1931, I had a phone call from the Herald telling me about the gold rush that had been taking place to the head of the Livingston River, and asking me if I were willing to take charge and guide a party to investigate the supposed strike, and also to provide all the necessary riding and pack horses and camp equipment for the trip. And when I agreed to do so, I was told that they would send a reporter to write up the story, and then put me in touch with Fred Kennedy, to who I gave a list of needed provisions. I wanted him to bring up to my Buffalo Head Ranch from Calgary. What? Oh, to who I gave a list. Yeah, so they put him in touch with Fred Kennedy, to whom he gave a list of needed provisions that he wanted him to bring up to the Buffalo Head Ranch from Calgary. He drove up to the ranch. I guess so, yeah. 30s, yeah. He drove up to the ranch, from where next day we rode to the head of the Livingston River over the Sentinel Mountain Pass, where the gold strike was supposed to have taken place, arriving at dusk. It was an unbelievably fine day. For that time of the year, a strong and very warm Chinook wind was blowing, and certainly no sign of a blizzard, as stated in the story. And no horse fell and broke his back. And I wonder what made Kennedy dream up that story about the blizzard and the horse with the broken back. As King Bearspaw had been camping near my ranch, I had hired him to come along and help with the packing and making camp. We found several hundred people making up the rush, and quite a number were camped at the head of the Livingston. King and I made camp as soon as possible, put up the tin stove, and started melting snow for tea, as the river was dry there. Next morning, King and I climbed a short way, no more than a quarter of a mile, to the location of the supposed gold-bearing stream, and I broke off 20 pounds of samples with my prospector's hammer. Those samples were the ones that the Herald, later on, had analyzed and found to be worthless. The mounted police then all got the people out. And lucky it was that the weather stayed warm. Had there been a real blizzard, many of the people would have not have been able to make it back to civilization. Oh shit. Yours truly, George W. Pocatera. Crazy. This fascinating letter shows that newspaper reports may sometimes be at odds with the facts, although there may be no way of knowing which version of the story is correct. Also, meriting closer to scrutiny is King Bearspaw's role in the discovery of the gold sample that sparked the rush in the first place. On February 16th, 1931, the Calgary Daily Herald printed the following item. On October 16th, 1930, King Bearspaw of the Stonies found a piece of quartz near the summit of Flat Mountain, a peak about 5,000 feet high that rises out of the east of the Livingston River. It looked like rich ore. He told Jack Hagerman of High River of his find. The three men went back in, and claims were staked. Whether or not the piece of quartz contained gold is not yet known, but the strange thing about it is that no other of a similar kind has been found in that vicinity and this has given rise to the belief that the quartz found by Bearspaw had floated down from somewhere. However, an intriguing letter to the editor of the Calgary Daily Herald, published on March 6, 1931, seems to throw a different light on this matter and may help to clear up this mystery. And this is the letter. Editor, The Herald. I have just been reading in the Daily Herald on February 16th the account of the gold boom on the Livingston River west of Nanton. As I have lived there for over 20 years, about 25 miles southwest of High River, and hunted and prospected the country around Sentinel Mountain and the Livingston River, maybe I can throw a little light on the subject that seems to be puzzling so many, namely, the source of the mineral that King Bearspaw found. In the summer of 1920, I was at Trail, BC. That's where we are. And while visiting the smelter, I picked up a pocket of what looked to me to be gold-bearing quartz. I don't want you to think I stole it, as that wasn't what I called it at all. I picked this stuff from where it had been dropped, either in the unloading cars or in transferring it to the smelter. And there was so much of it lying around. The same as there is coal lying around in the coal yard. Now, this stuff was undoubtedly rich, lay around our horse till one day in 1923, a few days after the big flood, when King Bearspaw stopped at the house and the conversation turned to gold, I showed him what we had and gave some of it to him. There's an old saying that if you keep a thing 7 years, you will find a use for it. And it looks to me as if King had found a use for this little bit of stuff I gave him 7 years ago. With a gold boom on, pack ponies and guides will be high priced, so you may draw your own conclusions. But as for gold, old Mr. Lafayette French was right when he said, "Boys, there's no gold in them thar hills." But the men who took it out used a saddle, horse, and a lariat and branding irons instead of a pick and a shovel and a gold pan. Those hills are the greatest cattle country ever, but only a disappointment for a prospector. Rush Bond, Rockford Bridge, Alberta. Holy shit. So when you think about that, then a lot of these other side stories just stem from some shit that was here in Trail. Yeah, cool. Actually, this shit was right there. Right across the street. That's crazy. It's crazy. 2 years later, a mini gold rush was started on Big Timber Creek, northwest of Morley. Although he was not specifically mentioned in the newspaper article about the discovery, it is possible that King Bearspaw was involved. The original clipping, dated October 1933, is incomplete, but it probably also came from the Calgary Daily Herald. 29 claims staked along the Big Timber Creek. Calgary, October 8th. Gold has been discovered along Big Timber Creek, 65 miles northwest of Morley, Alberta. 15 members of the Stoney Indian tribe is at the employ of Harry Ford and Jack Hunter, Chief Sitting Eagle. Calgary coal operators arrived in the city Wednesday and immediately filed placer and gold quartz claims at the provincial government land office. Rich in gold, the Indians brought with them samples of gravel from Big Timber Creek, and the dirt was apparently rich in gold. Mr. Ford produced a vial containing little nuggets and flakes, which he claimed he and Mr. Hunter had panned from the creek using ordinary frying pans. The samples were assayed at the Technical Institute here and were found to be pure gold. The Indians were wildly excited over the discovery, and the majority of the male members of the tribe have either state claims or else are going in. An abandoned cabin and an old prospector's pick. He left his little penis out there in the bush. Jesus. Okay, so an abandoned cabin and an old prospector's pick were found near the scene of the discovery, and the Indians believed that the lemon mine famed in song and story will be found in this vicinity. There is an automobile trail from Calgary to the Eau Claire lumber camp, and the remaining 30 miles to the discovery claim must be negotiated on horseback and pack train. News of the gold find was said to be spreading, and many outfits were preparing to go in on Thursday. For years, the Stonies have hunted in the vicinity of the reported gold strike, but it was only this year that they carried out any prospecting work. They first saw the abandoned cabin 35 years ago, but no one paid any attention to it until this year when some of the younger members of the tribe explored the ruins and brought to light a rusty old prospector's pick and a gold pan. In the final analysis, history will judge King Bearspaw. However, it matters little what some have said about him, for he spent more years searching for this hidden El Dorado than any other individual. Such tenacity deserves our respect. Few men keep the faith with a dream for over 70 years. It is only fitting that the final word on King Bearspaw and the Lost Lemon Mine should come from Bearspaw himself. Quotations. Some people claim that the Lost Lemon Mine only exists in the imagination of old-time prospectors and Indian hunters, but I know that that is not so. I was just a little boy when I first heard of the lemon mine at my mother's knee. More than 60 years ago, my grandfather and my father told me about it. They would not lie to me. Oh! Chapter 4. We did it. That's it. I'm done. Thanks for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed this chapter 3. I did. I thought it was amazing. Great story. Anyways, yeah. Please check that link in the description below for Brayden and his family. Other than that, this is Billiam signing off. Bye for now.